The first time Commander Calen Ebbett met the alien chef, things went sideways fast. Not in the "we got into a brawl and had to call for backup" kind of way, but more in the "he accused us of culinary terrorism" kind of way. Calen stood stiff in the conference room aboard the interspecies diplomatic vessel, the SSV Halcyon Verge. The hum of the ship's core was a constant undercurrent, like a heartbeat echoing through the metal bones of the ship. Before him stood Yilgar, the culinary ambassador from the Zhorathi collective, a species renowned for their strict biochemical sensitivities and culinary mastery that bordered on obsessive. Yilgar had 5 long, flexible appendages, each tipped with delicate tasting pats. He wore a shimmering wrap of interwoven silver fibers and a permanent air of disdain. Calen offered a polite nod. "Chef Yilgar, welcome aboard. I've arranged a tasting of Earth cuisine, as requested." Yilgar's central eye narrowed. "Is the food sterilized? Deactivated? The data on Terran spices is troubling. Capsaicin, piperine, allyl isothiocyanate. Your species consumes irritants recreationally." Calen suppressed a sigh. "They're not considered hazardous to us. We've included mild options." "Mild?" Yilgar repeated with disdain, as if the word itself offended him. "We shall see." In the adjoining mess hall, the culinary staff stood nervously around a polished steel table. A modest spread of carefully curated Earth dishes awaited: grilled vegetables seasoned with paprika and turmeric, flatbread with cumin and coriander, and a tiny bowl of chili con carne for the brave. "Begin with this," Calen said, pointing to the vegetables. "No capsaicin. Just paprika. Very mild." Yilgar extended a tasting limb and touched the surface of a zucchini slice. He paused, eyes fluttering shut, then retracted the limb immediately. "There is a biochemical flare," he said sharply. "This paprika, it is an alkaloid-based irritant." "Yes, but it's safe, and it would be considered a Class 3 aggressor compound in Zhorathi cuisine." "You're lucky we are not at war." Calen blinked. "With respect, chef, we eat this for breakfast." Yilgar turned to leave. "I will file a formal complaint with the Intercultural Harm Prevention Board." Calen sighed and followed him out. That might have been the end of it, if not for the incident in the hydroponics bay 2 days later. Yilgar had been given unrestricted access to the galley and food labs, under supervision, to prepare a Zhorathi-style meal for the crew of the Halcyon Verge. He was meticulous, crafting translucent strands of vine root paste and fermenting a protein gel over a low-heat algae bed. The ship's crew was polite, though few actually enjoyed the taste. On day 5, things took a turn. Calen was halfway through a maintenance report when the emergency alert chimed once. Not a red alert, but still a situation. He arrived at the hydroponics bay to find Yilgar hunched over a broken container, one of his tasting limbs twitching erratically. A pungent aroma filled the air. "What happened?" Calen asked. Yilgar's translator crackled. "There was a container mislabeled. I consumed unauthorized material." Calen's eyes widened. "What kind of material?" "I do not know the name." "Red powder. Sharp." "Consumed accidentally." Calen stepped closer, saw the broken container marked Experimental Carolina Reaper Powder, do not open. "Oh no." Yilgar's limbs twitched again. "The sensation is unacceptable. Unholy. My internal regulators are confused." Calen tapped his communicator. "Medical to hydroponics. Now." Within minutes, a team arrived and carted Yilgar to the medbay. He was stabilized quickly. Zhorathi physiology was surprisingly resilient, just not trained for Earth's more aggressive flavors. Calen waited outside the medbay. After 2 hours, the door hissed open and Yilgar emerged, his wrap slightly askew, tasting limb curled protectively. "I demand to speak with your culinary officer," Yilgar said flatly. "That would be me," Calen replied. Yilgar tilted his head. "You are a commander." "Well, I used to be a sous chef in Chicago before I joined the diplomatic service." Yilgar stared. "I didn't think it had come up," Calen added. Yilgar hesitated. "This powder, the Reaper compound. What is it used for?" "Mostly for fun," Calen admitted. "Challenges. Some sauces." "You're not supposed to eat it raw." Yilgar extended a limb. "I require a sample. Controlled conditions. I must understand it." "You realize you just had a physiological panic response?" "Yes," Yilgar said. "And yet, the sensation was compelling." Calen raised an eyebrow. "You liked it?" "It was a violation of everything I understand about taste. I must experience it again." The next day, Calen prepared a scaled-back sample, 2 drops of Carolina Reaper extract diluted in tomato puree. Yilgar approached the dish like a scholar dissecting heresy. He dipped a tasting pad, paused, and trembled. A long silence followed. More, Yilgar whispered. Calen stared. You're not serious. I require more. From that point on, things got complicated. Yilgar developed a fixation. He began requesting increasingly spicy ingredients, from habanero oil to Sichuan peppercorns. Calen tried to moderate the doses, but Yilgar would sneak into the galley at night, bypassing security protocols to access spice storage. Calen caught him on the 3rd night. You're breaking protocol, Calen snapped, cornering him by the dry stores. I need it, Yilgar whispered. The sensation it resets my entire sensory matrix. It is chaos. It is beautiful. You're treating ghost pepper dust like it's a narcotic. Perhaps it is. Calen sighed. This is going to be an incident report the size of a novella. That week, Yilgar's behavior shifted. He abandoned Zhorathi cuisine entirely and began experimenting with hybrid dishes, Zhorathi-based textures fused with earth spices. The results were bizarre, but oddly effective. At first, the crew was cautious, then curious, then addicted. By week 3, the galley had a wait list. Lieutenant Para, a former nutritionist, approached Calen in the corridor. You've created a monster, she said flatly. I didn't feed him the stuff. He stole it. He made a fermented algae tart with smoked paprika and chipotle honey. I cried. It was magnificent. Yilgar's influence spread. He began running flavor trials, inviting crew to taste dishes and provide feedback. He recorded the emotional responses, adjusted spice levels, and logged everything meticulously. But not everyone was pleased. The Zhorathi ambassador, Zurin, arrived aboard the Halcyon Verge unexpectedly. He was grim-faced, diplomatic crest glowing faintly. You have corrupted our chef, he declared, facing Calen in the observation chamber. He corrupted himself, Calen replied. He is no longer preparing food by Zhorathi standards. He is reckless. He's inventive. He is dangerous. Yilgar entered behind them. I disagree, he said. Zurin turned sharply. You are dismissed. Permanently. Return with me to the collective. No, you are malfunctioning. I am evolving. Zurin stormed out. Yilgar turned to Calen. I will not go back. You're making this ship's food taste like nuclear fire. You're not exactly low profile. I will continue under your supervision. Calen folded his arms. You realize this means I have to file paperwork. Lots. I will prepare you a stew while you do. Calen stared at him. Deal. And so Yilgar stayed. Under strict supervision, he was allowed to continue his culinary experiments. He wore a small restraint band on one limb to prevent unauthorized access to high-grade spice stores. He protested it daily. Months passed. The hybrid cuisine began to gain attention outside the ship. Dignitaries from other species requested tastings. A delegation from the Varine Confederacy requested a catering contract. Even the Zhorathi collective, after initial outrage, began to cautiously accept the idea of culinary fusion. Yilgar prepared a dish for the Zhorathi Council 6 months later. A traditional root paste served with a Sichuan glaze and a whisper of habanero oil. They did not faint. They did not declare war. They asked for the recipe. Calen sat in the observation lounge, watching stars drift past the viewport, a mug of ginger tea in hand. Yilgar entered quietly, carrying a small tray. I have made you something, he said. Calen looked at the tray. A small dish of glazed meat, shimmering with a crimson tint. He sniffed. His eyes watered instantly. You're trying to kill me. I have calibrated it for your biology. Calen picked up the fork, took one bite, and coughed violently. Then he nodded. That's incredible. Yilgar bowed slightly. Thank you. So what now? I wish to open a restaurant, Yilgar said. On Earth. Calen laughed. You really think people are ready for that? Yilgar's eyes glittered. They will be. Calen leaned against the cool metal frame of the viewing port in the Halcyon Verge's tertiary galley, watching the glimmer of a slow-rotating asteroid belt beyond. The galley lights were dimmed to a low amber standard for night cycle, but the kitchen behind him buzzed with quiet activity anyway. Yilgar was still working, silhouetted in the soft glow of a suspended cooking field, focused, silent, entirely undeterred by the hour. You're aware it's ship's sleep cycle, right? Calen asked, not turning. Yilgar didn't look up. I find the absence of foot traffic ideal. No collisions. No questions. No unsolicited reactions. You mean feedback? No. Reactions. Yilgar adjusted the temperature dial on a narrow induction plate with one limb, while another stirred a translucent paste in a rotating dish. Your species experiences involuntary emissions when tasting novel stimuli. I cataloged 16 during the last session. One crew member wept. Another began singing. That was Ensign Rivera. He does that when he's overwhelmed. Yes. He must never enter the galley again. Calen stepped away from the viewport and circled around the prep station. You've been at this for 6 hours. What are you making? A flight of emulsion structured to collapse at varying thresholds of thermal contact with the tongue. Calen blinked. Why? Because your commander of engineering challenged me. Calen frowned. She what? Yilgar paused, then reached for a gelatinous orb with a mechanical tong. She stated, and I quote, "Bet you can't make anything spicier than that fire tofu from Taipei Station." I interpreted this as a formal escalation. You're competing with Chief Holtz over who can make the most mouth-destroying food. I am demonstrating superiority through culinary architecture. Calen rubbed his temples. You realize she once ate a raw but jolokia pepper on a dare and didn't blink. She has not tried this. Yilgar placed one of the completed orbs on a chilled tray. It shimmered faintly, its surface rippling like it was alive. Calen leaned in. What's in it? A compound derived from 3 separate capsicum strains, encased in a neutralizing protein shell. The effect activates upon oral rupture. That sounds like a landmine. It is a gift. The orb pulsed gently as it cooled. You're going to kill her, Calen said. I have made medical adjustments. Dosage has been calculated to induce intense perspiration, temporary sinus dilation, and a mild endorphin cascade. Mild for who? Yilgar finally looked at him. I consumed one earlier. I lost awareness of gravity for several minutes. It was enlightening. Calen stared. You're not cleared for human scale doses. I'm not human. That's not the point. Yilgar tapped the cooling tray. Taste is a frontier. I am merely an explorer. Calen exhaled slowly. Just promise me you'll submit the ingredients list to medical before she eats it. I already have. You did. I also included estimated metabolic responses, possible allergic cross-reactions, and 3 flavor alternatives in case she lacks fortitude. Calen folded his arms. You're really leaning into this whole spice prophet identity. It is not a role. It is an inevitability. The orb hissed faintly as it stabilized. 3 hours later, just before the crew's morning cycle began, Holtz entered the galley wearing a sleeveless shirt and a towel around her neck. Her eyes were still puffy with sleep, but her expression was eager. You got it ready? She asked, grabbing a stool. Yilgar gestured to the tray. It is cooled to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Optimal rupture temperature. Holtz picked up the orb delicately, turning it in her fingers. Looks like candy. It is not candy. She popped it into her mouth before Calen could say anything. The effect was immediate. Her pupils dilated. Her shoulders stiffened. She froze for 3 full seconds, then slammed her palm against the counter once. Holy, she didn't finish. She began to cough sharp, punctuated, but not desperate. Her eyes streamed. She pointed at Yilgar with trembling fingers and then gave a shaky thumbs up. Water, she rasped. Calen slid a thermos toward her. You were warned. She took a gulp and exhaled like she'd finished a marathon. That was evil. Yilgar inclined his head. Thank you. Holtz grinned despite the tears. My ears are ringing. You win. Yilgar's limbs relaxed slightly. Would you like another? She laughed, then coughed again. Not unless you have a defibrillator on standby. She left still sweating, mumbling something about revenge and ice cream. Calen watched the door slide shut. You realize this is going to escalate, he said. I hope so. By midday, word of Holtz's reaction had spread. Several off-duty officers had already dropped by the galley to see the orb, as if it were a religious relic. Yilgar had to install a retinal scanner on the spice cabinet to prevent unauthorized access. Crew began bartering for tasting slots. Someone tried to trade a shift-off planetary survey duty in exchange for a single bite of the new batch. Calen brought it up during the daily operations briefing. She made a full recovery, he said, but I want it on record that we're not liable if this turns into a ship-wide bioresponse incident. Captain Thalver tilted his head, his pale blue outer carapace catching the light. The human voluntarily consumed the item. There was no coercion. It's not just about consent. We're seeing physiological effects beyond standard culinary exposure. I'm concerned about long-term implications. Thalber's ocular nodules blinked asynchronously. The Zhorathi chef is acting within his assigned creative purview. Calen tapped the table. We've created a black market gastronomy ring. The captain paused. Perhaps we should formalize it. You want to make it official? Containment through structure is preferable to chaos. 2 days later, the Halcyon Verge issued a crew-wide memo. Spice trials to be conducted under controlled conditions. Scheduled to be coordinated through the Culinary Innovation Initiative. The next week was organized madness. Yilgar converted a secondary storage room into a testing chamber. 1 human medic and 1 Zhorathi assistant were required to be present at each session. Participants signed waivers acknowledging potential side effects, ranging from sweating to temporary euphoria to, in one case, spontaneous poetry recitation. Calen observed from the side during one of the trials. A junior comms officer with more enthusiasm than sense had just swallowed something Yilgar called the ember seed. Tongue's gone fuzzy, the officer said, eyes wide. That's normal, the medic replied, checking his pulse. I can taste colors. Also normal. Are those my hands? No talking now. Yilgar recorded everything without comment. After the session, Calen caught him cleaning the tasting tools. You're enjoying this way too much. Yilgar didn't look up. I am conducting research. You're becoming a cult figure. That is not my fault. You've got people describing your food like it's a spiritual experience. Because it is. Calen leaned against the wall. You ever going to slow down? There is no end to interpretation. Your species seeks sensation. I provide it. Until someone's brain melts. Yilgar paused. I have calculated the threshold for irreversible damage. I stay below it. Comforting. Later that night, Calen found a small container outside his quarters. Inside was a single, neatly packed dumpling, labeled for when you need clarity. He stared at it, debating the wisdom of untested alien culinary gifts. Then he ate it. It was tender, warm, and carried a heat that unfolded slowly, like a sunrise behind his ribcage. It didn't burn. It pulsed. His headache faded. His thoughts sharpened. He didn't feel euphoric. He felt awake. He slept better than he had in weeks. The next morning, he found Yilgar in the galley, already working. What was in that dumpling? He asked. Yilgar didn't pause. You do not want to know. Calen considered pressing, then didn't. Make me another one tonight. Yilgar's limbs twitched faintly. Very well. Neither of them mentioned it again. And the trials continued. Yilgar was late. Calen tapped his stylus against the edge of the galley data pad, chewing the inside of his cheek while glancing at the sealed door to the sanitation chamber. Through the observation slit, the Zhorathi silhouette remained motionless, limbs drawn inward like a folded insect. The chef had been inside for over 40 minutes. The diagnostics team had cleared the air circulation system hours ago, so Calen ruled out contamination. That left one possibility. Commander, came the quiet voice of Dr. Lien through the intercom. His vitals aren't critical, but they're irregular. Elevated cardiac rhythm, inconsistent limb temperature. He's not responding to my queries. I'll try, Calen answered. It took 3 attempts before Yilgar finally unlocked the door. The first thing Calen noticed was the smell and acrid, metallic tang that clung to the walls. The second was Yilgar's posture. His central torso had collapsed slightly inward, and his tasting limbs were retracted into their sheaths, something Calen had only seen once before when Yilgar had encountered a raw chunk of pickled herring during an ambassadorial meal and had nearly fainted. Tell me what happened, Calen said, stepping inside and letting the door seal behind him. Yilgar shifted against the wall. I miscalculated. Miscalculated what? I introduced a new variable. A compound from the Selnari trade vessel, a powdered root they call mira bark. I intended to blend it with a suspension of smoked paprika oil and a touch of fermented citrus from your colony on Ganymede. Calen crouched beside him, and the reaction was unstable. The bark contained an unlisted triglyceride that broke down the protein buffer in the oil emulsion. It vaporized. You inhaled it. I tasted it mid-aeration. The vapor entered my sinuses and activated my secondary neural strip. Calen exhaled. That's the strip that regulates your balance, isn't it? It also modulates emotional thresholds. I experienced disorientation and an acute empathy surge. I began to weep. You don't have tear ducts. I produced fluid through vestigial salivary pores. Calen reached for the emergency medkit mounted on the wall. You should have called someone. I was ashamed. You're not allowed to be ashamed. You're a crew member. You're supposed to report physiological incidents, not hide in a sterilization room. I feared revocation. Of what? My culinary license. I violated containment protocols. I exposed the galley to unvetted ingredients. Calen pulled out a diagnostic wand and held it near Yilgar's central core. The readings were erratic but stabilizing. You're not getting ejected over a spice cloud. I nearly collapsed in front of a refrigeration unit. I've done that after 3 espressos and no sleep. You're fine. A long silence stretched between them. Then Yilgar spoke, quieter than Calen had ever heard him. I believed I had mastered the chaos. I did not anticipate that chaos could evolve. You're not dealing with chaos. You're dealing with biology. Unfamiliar inputs. It's what humans do every time we try food from anywhere else. I'm not human. Exactly. So stop measuring yourself against us. Yilgar's limbs slowly uncurled. I have prepared a statement for the captain. You're not writing a resignation letter. It is a precaution. No, Calen said. It's guilt. You're not allowed to wallow in that either. I contaminated the airspace. You created a new compound. That's research. That's what we're here for. Yilgar looked at him with an unblinking central eye. You believe failure is part of the creative cycle. I believe if you're not failing now and then, you're not trying hard enough. Another pause. I require 3 hours to recalibrate my chemical dispersal models. You'll take 6. And you'll rest first. I am not fatigued. You're trembling. I am not. You are. Yilgar's limbs twitched. Perhaps slightly. Rest. That's an order. 4 hours later, Calen returned to find the galley sealed, quiet, and spotless. A note was taped to the inside of the viewing panel actual paper, which was absurdly rare on a starship. It read, recalibrated, awaiting inspection. Inside, Yilgar stood at a single prep station, a small ceramic dish in front of him. It contained a translucent cube gently quivering under a heat lamp. I present an apology, he said. You're not required to apologize. I am offering contrition through synthesis. This is a controlled flavor bloom. No irritants. No volatile oils. Just temperature-reactive proteins and a hint of citrus from Earth's northern hemisphere. Calen picked up a tasting stick and touched it to the surface of the cube. The texture was elastic, slightly warm. He brought it to his mouth and let it dissolve. It tasted like a memory clean, citrusy, but not sharp. There was a lingering note he couldn't place, something soft and round, like the scent of rain on old stone. His shoulders dropped. His jaw unclenched. He felt like he'd just stepped into a quiet room and shut the door on the galaxy. He opened his eyes. That didn't burn. It was not intended to. It didn't shock, sting, or light any part of my nervous system on fire. I wanted to remind myself that flavor does not require violence. Calen set the stick down. You succeeded. Yilgar remained still. Will the trials continue? If you're careful, I will be. Then yes. A few days later, during a scheduled interspecies diplomatic reception, Yilgar presented a new menu, each course a study in restraint. The spicy compounds were still present, but muted, balanced by cooling agents and aromatic buffers. Delegates from 4 species attended. None of them panicked. One of them, a Threxian diplomat with a notoriously fragile palate, requested seconds. After the guests departed, Captain Thalver approached Yilgar near the serving station. You have not incited any interstellar incidents this evening, he observed. That was not the goal. Thalver tilted his head. You appear to have reconsidered your methods. I have recalibrated my relationship with intensity. An admirable development. Yilgar inclined his limbs fractionally. I have learned that provocation is only one form of persuasion. Thalver tapped his data slate. I will note that in the culinary logs. Late that evening, Calen returned to the galley alone. Yilgar was cleaning silently, his movements slow and deliberate. You good? Calen asked. I remain operational. No more spice clouds. No more secret bark imports. The Selnari have been informed that I require full compound breakdowns prior to trade. Good. Calen stepped to the window and watched the stars drift by in slow procession. You know, he said after a while, you made something tonight that didn't just taste good. It made people feel calm. That's not easy to do. It required restraint. That's harder than setting someone's tongue on fire. Yilgar paused, then nodded. Yes, but it is less entertaining. Calen laughed. You'll live. I intend to. They stood in silence for a moment longer. No alarms. No emergency calls. Just the quiet hum of the ship and the lingering scent of roasted citrus. I'll see you tomorrow, Calen said. I will have tea prepared, Yilgar replied. And for once, neither of them had anything more to add.